when you are in like this really codependent relationship, when you try to push against that, which is what I've been expressing that I've been doing, which is like the opposite of codependency is hyper independence. She said that, I'm like, holy cow, because you started bringing up codependency and I'm like, not I, because I've been trying to be hyper and completely push and remove myself to where I can't even feel myself in this space. I feel like I'm standing still and the world is just spinning and I can see it like twisting. Like I'm so disconnected, trying so hard to remove myself and be hyper independent so I don't affect and I don't become affected. And the only way that I can think to do that is to completely disengage, which is a super healthy way to do it. It's really good for relationships. It's really good. It's really nourishing.
We'll make it out and fall in love tonight.
Let's do this.
We're doing it.
Okay.
It's done. This episode is already in the can.
In the can. Yeah, I'm ready. Let's just like throw it out there. Codependency. Here we go.
You just want to throw it out there?
Right. Let's
Part
just
of the-
like get into it and
Yeah,
why
part
we're
of what
talking about it.
Part of what we want to do with the podcast is not just share with you our experiences over the past like decade of healing together, but our real life stuff that we're going through, like present moment. And this topic of codependency and how we have experienced it, how we've been navigating it, how we've been living it, I think is probably an appropriate way to say it.
How it's showing up in our space right now in ways that we're aware of and new ways that we are just barely gaining awareness of.
So it's all really, really fresh for us. And to give you a little bit of background, I don't know if we can.
Right.
Let's
give
go
you our
into it.
background on codependency. Let's over-explain it because
Yes.
that's not a codependent way to let you know why we can talk about it because we're not codependent
We're
in
super-
every single possible way.
So what happened was
Yeah.
we moved to Tennessee, and that put us into like a whole bunch of, I don't want to say trauma.
I was going to say we were codependent long before Tennessee.
No, it only happened since we've been here. We have, I don't even know how to start this conversation. It's one of those things that I started to recognize, and it's not new. Like it's something that I remember when I was going through therapy, it was kind of like in my space then too, thinking about it. And we are so connected to each other, and we have like this really special bond. And it's part of our like love story in a sense. And I love that. Like I love our connection and our bond and like our ability to kind of know what each other's thinking and feeling and really connected to each other and all of those really beautiful things. And then you shift that stuff to a slightly different perspective. And we started to recognize and see how much we were emotionally monitoring each other all the time, how we, the beauty of being able to finish each other's sentences isn't necessarily always a good thing. How, like groupthink, we talk about that a lot too, where we have very similar ideas and thoughts, but not necessarily our own thoughts. We, all of these things that are super codependent. And I was getting to the point, especially here in Tennessee, because we were meeting all these new people and I was starting to talk to everybody and make friends and all this kind of stuff. And I found myself not being able to carry on a conversation with somebody without referring to us as a we. And so I would be talking to somebody about like whatever. It didn't even matter what the topic was about, but I would refer to we as like you and me. And like initially I didn't see an issue with it. Like it took me a while, and then it kept coming up and happening again when I would catch myself, and I'd be like, why can't I say I? Like I have a thought or I have an opinion about something. And what slowly started to happen was I started to recognize that I like my default was to refer to us as a we, like as this singular thing that has the same thought about everything. We see eye to eye on every topic, or I think part of it is because we work together. Part of it's because we do this podcast, like all of these kind of different things where we spend so much time together and we have so many different conversations all the time. But it's also to the point where I started to recognize and see how it was a really big problem for me, where I didn't feel separate from you in a sense of like even just trying to have a conversation. Like I was talking to people, friends that the conversation, not to say it didn't have anything to do with you, like, but it didn't have anything to do with you. It wasn't a conversation about like you and me and what we're doing in our life and our relationship. It was just a conversation. And I would go to say something and I would be like, yeah, we think, and by we, I mean Steph and I. And I'm like, why the fuck am I bringing you into this conversation? You're not there. You're not present. It has nothing to do with you. But yet I can't separate my own thought from yours in a sense. Like it's only okay if you and I are on the same page. Or, I don't know. It's very strange. And this isn't the best example, but
it's still something you're unpacking and like looking at in different ways. It's not like fully there yet.
It's very much something that we're both still unpacking. It's not
it's just
me.
you. You have to figure your shit out because I'm fine over here. Obviously, that's bullshit.
And so I started to kind of like actively practice not saying that. So I would catch myself when I would say it and then I would correct it. And that got a little bit better. Not a lot better, a little bit better. And then I just started to really think about it from the lens of like how much I am connected to you for all of my like emotional needs and all of my, like we talked about this the other day too, where it's like I wake up in the morning and have a hard time setting my day without first gauging where you're at in your day. And there's some parts of it that's like, yeah, we're touching base and kind of seeing what the schedules are and what's, you know, what we have for the day. That's like the normal healthy side of it. But underneath it, the subconscious thing was emotionally, I can't regulate myself until I know where you're at. And then I'm able to gauge, okay, you're like, let's say the big emotional, here I am putting everything on a graph to make it easy for me, right? So between 1 and 10, right?
Okay.
And 10 being like, you're having the worst day of your life and you're like stuck in bed.
It's a bad
and,
day.
Right. It's just terrible and you're depressed and you're anxious and all the anxiety and everything like that. And then 1 being like a perfect day where you're super chill, nervous system, very calm, very regulated.
Yes.
I have to check where that is so then I can decide how to regulate my nervous system. Because if you're at a 10, then that means I have to do this, that, or the other to try to help you calm down, help you regulate, help all of these kind of different things, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're at a 1, cool, now I can be at a 1 and I can kind of check in. All of those things, like I can hear people, I can't actually. I presume people are like talking about this topic is very hard because I feel a lot of shame about it. It makes me feel very little and very small. And that's also what I realized was that this behavior didn't start with you and didn't start with our relationship. But that's one example. And was that a fleshed out enough of an example?
I think so. And I can easily speak to that. Like I have my own journey with it as well. But just that part of where like that example I can speak to in my role in it and how we just kind of like ping ponged off of each other there is that like there's so much of it that you would ask me like what's going on, how am I feeling? And I'm immediately like pressure and searching for like what is the right answer? What do you need me to feel, want, need, or do right now? Because you're looking for something and I have to meet that. And so when you're like, what are your plans for the day? Just a simple thing, but you come at me with this like I can tell you're figuring out what you're going to do based off of that. And so then I feel like it's my responsibility to figure out what it is that you're going to do so I can give you the appropriate answer that allows you to do that, because otherwise you're going to be like off. You're going to be like, you're going to be mad that you have to do this thing. You're going to be resentful. All of these ways that I feel, basically, I just am trying to micromanage and create the right outcome for you. So I'm like, I don't know where I'm supposed to be. And I can tell you want me to be somewhere. And so I'm trying to be there instead of, and then when I push that aside and I'm like, I'm just being where I am, it's really hard and it's really scary. And then I feel like I have to apologize for it. Like if I'm really happy and you're not, then I'm like, oh, am I too much? And if I'm low and not feeling great and you are, then I have to like remove myself and just get myself as far away from as possible. Like, so that's how I can feed into that. I'm not always there, but I'm there a lot more than I want to be there, that I want to admit that I'm there. Like even right now, I'm like, I'm hardly ever there. That happens sometimes because it sucks to admit like,
it feels like a huge weakness, right?
It feels so weak. It feels so weak. And it's like, I feel like, honestly, like the shame is big because the word that's in my space, I'm like, you're pathetic. You are being so pathetic and you're putting so much pressure. And it's just, it sucks. It sucks. So I try to, my reaction to that, and it's been a big reaction. I was talking to a friend this morning actually, and she said something because it just like, she's like, what are you guys going to talk about today? And I told her, and she's like, this is big in my space. This is something that I just learned. And she said that when you are in like this really codependent relationship and you have the strong, when you try to push against that, which is what I've been expressing that I've been doing, which is like the opposite of codependency is hyper independence, hyper. And I didn't have that part. When she said that, I'm like, holy cow, because you started bringing up codependency. And I'm like, not I, because I've been trying to be hyper and completely push and remove myself to where I can't even feel myself in this space. Like there's so much distance that time is just passing. And I feel like I'm standing still and the world is just spinning and I can see it like twisting. Like I'm so disconnected, trying so hard to remove myself and be hyper independent so I don't affect and I don't become affected. And the only way that I can think to do that is to completely disengage, which is a super healthy way to do it. It's really good for relationships. It's really good. It's really nourishing.
Right.
But I don't know what else to do at this point.
I don't know what else to do either.
Right,
like
yeah.
the thing that I want to highlight too is you said that we're not always like this.
Yeah, we're not.
And I think I am always like this because I was thinking about it from the perspective of like a lot of these behaviors that we're starting to be really hyper aware of. For myself, I recognize them when I'm really activated. So if I'm going through some really painful things, if I'm in the thick of processing some difficult things, or life is really stressful, like we've had some stressful things this year already, thank God.
I've had some stressful things this week.
Right. And that triggers all of these kind of codependent behaviors of mine where I become, and we've talked about it through the lens of like emotional monitoring and people pleasing and the fawn response. And there's a lot of different ways to kind of label all of this stuff. But for me, I recognize it now just through this new lens of this is all just super codependent behavior. And I definitely do it more when I'm stressed and when I'm anxious. But I think even when my nervous system is really calm and relaxed, I still lean into, like, that's when I lean into the part of it that to me at least feels healthy at this point, where it's like interdependence. But I really don't think I'm there yet. I think I'm trying to get to that space where, do you know what I mean? Like in an ideal situation, you're like, hey, I'm going to go do this thing. And I'll be like, cool, I'll see you later. Have fun, right? And then you leave, and there's always a part of me that starts to panic. And it's very like subtle, even when things are really good. Even when by that I mean like when my nervous system is really regulated and I feel really calm and I'm not stressed, and you leave, I always have this moment of panic. And it's very subtle at times, and then other times it's like really not subtle at all. It's very intense, and I have to try to start calming myself and regulating my own nervous system and all those kind of things. And so I don't think I'm to the point where, I think I do it all the time, even in good times, even when I'm calm. And that might be an extreme, right? I don't think it's ever one way 100% of the time. There's probably some times that I'm not, but I can't see them right now.
Yeah.
And I might just be paying attention to it more. Like I'm definitely hyper aware to it right now, where I'm actively looking for ways that these things are showing up. I'm actively looking for ways where I'm deferring to you in a sense, or I'm hyper focused on you. Like one of the things that I shared with you yesterday when we were talking about doing this episode was a thing that I do now to help is when I start to recognize that I'm thinking more about your feelings and what you're doing and what you're experiencing and what your thoughts are than I'm thinking about mine. And it's a lot of like, oh, Stephanie's upset, Stephanie's angry, she's going to be mad, this sucks too, babe. And I think it's just the reality of it, where it's where your mood's at And so if your mood is slightly off, and off is relative, right? It's not like I'm
Yeah, I'm
expecting you.
perimenopausal. How are you doing this? Like, you never know where I'm at. How are you doing this?
Right. And I remember growing up as a kid, the narrative was my dad would come home from work and we had to like shift and alter up the vibe of the house because we didn't want to upset him or anything like that. But the more that and that was definitely a factor. So that meant that I was tuned into like the emotional state of the house, as well as like the energy of the house, all those kind of different things based off of my dad's mood. But my dad wasn't home a lot. He had a job where he was gone quite often. And so the thing that I have been unpacking a lot is how attuned I was to my mom's mood and where she was at, and more specifically, like where she was at emotionally and what she was feeling. And so that's what I'm recognizing more and more, where that's my default setting, where you feel X, Y, or Z, right? Wherever you're at, then that's how I decide how I feel, even from a subconscious level. Like, it's not conscious, right? I'm not sitting there being like,
How are we feeling today?
Right. It's all subconscious. And I hate it.
Yeah.
Like, it drives me bonkers, because the whole thing of like, your partner should be able to have a off day and it shouldn't throw your day off, right?
Yeah.
You should be able to feel whatever you're feeling without it shaping or influencing what I'm feeling. And then it's the dance of like, is that, because I this is the thing that I think is really funny, and I'm sure that a lot of people can relate. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to let you have a bad day and me have a good day. It feels like if you're having a bad day, I have to be involved in the process of trying to make your day better. And if I just try to have a good day simultaneously while you're having a bad day, I feel like the biggest asshole in the world. And the story becomes, in my brain, right? The story that I tell myself is, well, you're definitely going to leave me. Like, this is going to be some sort of reason why you're like, yeah, he doesn't care about me. He doesn't care if I'm in a bad mood. He doesn't do anything. Like, all of those things go through my brain, instead of just being like, no, you're an adult. She's an adult. She can have a bad day. It's okay. Just feel, because there's literally days where I'm like, I'm in a really good mood, and then you're not. And then I struggle the entire day trying to do that dance back and forth between like, do I people please you? Do I make your day better?
Which definitely helps when I'm having an off day. When you start people pleasing, it just fixes everything.
You're welcome.
Right? You are like, that's so stressful to try and be in that space. And there's like the part of me that, because I can't relate to people pleasing either. So as I'm actively trying to people please
We need
right
a
now,
sarcastic button.
right? I like think of, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Come back. You can say it. You can be vulnerable. I was about to say something really vulnerable. So now I was like, pew, sarcastic button. That's where my focus is.
Right.
I'll see if I can just get to it. Like, not being able to control this for you is super like hard.
When you say control this, what do you mean?
Because like, you want to make it better, right? You either want to make it better because you feel bad about being in a good mood. And I've tried several times to communicate, like, you get to be in a good mood. That actually helps. That's nice to know that I'm not bringing you down, because I feel like I have to hide my emotions so much, because if I'm in a bad mood, then it's going to bring you down, and I don't want to do that. So I have to like fake that I'm happier than I am a lot, fake that I'm okay a lot, which means I'm not in my body a lot, because otherwise I bring you down and it's too hard. And the story is that I'm too much. My emotions are too much, and I'm supposed to regulate this facade of not too happy because that's annoying, and that's too much, not too sad because that's annoying and too much. But I have to maintain this neutral with just the right amount of enthusiasm so that people around me can feel okay and be ready to like help if you're having a hard day, or like really encourage your upbeat day and be where I'm not. Like, that was my programming, right? This is how you mitigate a toxic household. And it doesn't matter if you're in a toxic household or not. This is how you are supposed to like take care of everybody's emotions around. So it's really hard for me to not make it better for you and try to and just be like, no, I'm having emotions. I'm having an off day. I want to be left alone. I want to lay in bed and cry, or I actually want to snuggle with you. I want some attention if you can give that. My go-to is to be left alone. It's rare that I need physical connection. And then when I do, it is such a it's such a difficult space to get into because I feel so pathetic. I feel so gross. I feel so needy. I feel like having a need that says I want to feel physical support from my partner is terrible, which is bullshit, right? But I'm like, I'm asking you too much. I'm asking you to be able to share space with me and hold me or let me lean against you so I can feel our support and co-regulate, which means I am just obnoxious, anxious, like all of the things it tells me, like I don't deserve that comfort was what it comes down to. I don't deserve that comfort, and I'm definitely depleting you if I ask you for it. So then I want to be left alone. I want to be alone. Or if I do need that and you can't meet me there, it's totally okay. Like sometimes I can say, if you can't meet me here, this is okay, but I need to go take care of myself now. But other times I'm like, can you hold me? And if you can't, then I'm like, you are stupid. Why did you ask? How dare you ask that? You knew better than that. This is why you can't. And then it just comes to that self-shaming thing. So the best thing for me to do is be okay, not too okay, because then it looks fake, and not too down, just so you don't have to mitigate any emotion around me. Which, how are we like existing in a relationship when we're both like doing this?
We're killing it. We're doing so good.
It's like, how, like right now it's really hard.
Yeah.
Right now it is really, really hard. So much is coming up. And my story is I can't not be available for you. And recognizing how much that has depleted me, and to where now I am saying, I'm sorry, I have to go do things. I need to break away a little bit. And I'm terrified to do that. And you're supporting me so much in that outside. But I'm like, you hate it. You hate it. You really don't want me to go do anything. You really don't want me to. And then on the other hand, you're like, will you get the fuck out of my hair? Right? It's like, I feel like I can't hit that. You want me to leave? You want me to stay? And I'm like, Steph, what do you want to do?
Right.
What do you want to like go do things? You do. Okay, go do things. Do you always want to be going and doing things? Nope. But I sure need to do a lot more than I've been doing. So we're trying. It's hard. It's hard.
This came to a head recently on our anniversary, actually. We just celebrated our 9-year anniversary. And I brought it up to you. We were having this really wonderful connected bath together. And I decided to talk about this. And I don't even remember how I brought it up. But we do that all the time where we're like, hey, we slowed down enough. And I think that's what it is we were slowed down enough to actually start connecting and talking. And because this has been so present in my space, it's like, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bring awareness to the ways that we're codependent, that I'm doing these things and I'm trying to change these things. And I really want to shift up this stuff. And immediately it threw you into a panic, I think.
Well, we were having a nice connected anniversary bath, and you're like, here's our codependency and why we need to like, and I'm like, what the fuck where did that come from? Like, we're finally connected, but agreed. That's because we slowed down enough. So yeah, I was not prepared for that. And it absolutely threw me into a panic, which I'm sure was very calming for you to help you go into that space. It helped me
regulate my nervous system really nicely. Yeah.
You're like, I hope there's not a reaction. Oops.
Yep.
And I was naked because I was in a bath, like hard conversations, right? Hard conversations. I need to have clothes on.
Yeah.
So I handled it. Actually, I didn't do too bad.
You did really good. We got through it.
It threw me.
We were able to have the hard conversation and kind of come out on the other side of it.
So keep going.
But since then, how has it been for you in the sense of like, because I don't think, like I want to talk about from the perspective, babe, of how you don't like the idea of it. You were like, I'm not codependent. I'm doing all of these other things.
Right.
And I had a moment in that conversation where I recognized that I was doing that same thing that I was talking about earlier, where I lump us together. And it's like, okay, I might think that I'm codependent, and I might think that you're also codependent in this beautifully codependent relationship that we're in, but you don't have to think that way. You don't have to think like I think.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that because growing up there was, and I don't know how to articulate this because I'm trying to articulate it from my perspective rather than like speaking about it in a third person. But
We're incredibly grateful that you've chosen to spend your time with us. Out of all the podcasts you could be listening to right now, you're here with Steph and Craig, and we are so grateful to have you here with us. We have a simple mission. We want to help you create better relationships and live your best life. And we need your help. We have a goal of reaching over 1 million people on YouTube. And you can help us achieve that goal by heading over there right now and hitting the subscribe button for the Steph and Craig Show. And also, make sure you click on that bell so you get notified of every new episode that we have coming out. And you can take it one step further by sharing this episode or another one of your favorites with your friends, your family members, or somebody who you think would benefit from hearing this. Every little bit helps because we believe we all do better when we heal together. Now let's get back to the show.
growing up in my house, I very much had things that you had to agree with and that we all agreed on, right? Everybody in my family agreed on certain things. And then that was like the belief around whatever. And I'm not talking about our beliefs in regards to like religion or things like that, but it's this group thought of we do this type of thing. We are this type of person. We are this type of family. And that mindset, I mean, it's a simple thing of like, we like baseball. Our favorite team is the Los Angeles Dodgers, right? That's a good example, actually, where I grew up and I would speak about it from the perspective of like, the Los Angeles Dodgers are my favorite baseball team. And here's all the reasons why. And truth of it is, I mean, they weren't, do you know what I mean? I liked playing baseball, but I wasn't, all those kind of things, but I didn't have the ability to articulate any of that at the time as a child. And you also, as a child, I also can see it now from the perspective of wanting to be a part of the family and feel safe and connected. And do you know what I mean? So I think that's a lot of where that stems from, where it makes me feel safe if you and me do think the same, and if we are on the same page, and if we have the same ideas, and we like the same things, and all of that makes me feel like we're a family and that we are in love with each other and that we're safe together, because it's based off of this program, this idea. It's based off of the family unit that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy.
Yeah.
It's just not. At least I don't believe it is. I'm sure there's a lot of people that might think that it is, or that might not see that that's an issue. But when it comes to like
and maybe
autonomy,
it's not, but it's become an issue for us.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be, but for us, it is definitely becoming an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to figure out what it looks like. And when we had that conversation on our anniversary, like as soon as you didn't agree with me, I panicked. Like I immediately panicked and got really scared. And then I started we may have talked about this on another episode too, but I started to try to subconsciously get you to make me feel better because you were mad at me is the narrative in my head.
What was I actually though?
You were just upset. Like you were having a moment. You were having an emotion. You were processing it your way, right?
Was I okay?
I don't know. What were you?
I wasn't agreeing with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But again, you not agreeing with me tells me that you're mad at me.
Okay.
And all of this stuff, like the big, huge caveat to all of these things that we're talking about, and we recognize this because of a lot of the work that we've done, but all of this codependency and these coping mechanisms and like attachment, there's a lot of attachment theory involved here too.
A lot.
Secure attachment and insecure and avoidant and all these kind of different things. This is all 100% connected to my childhood and how I was raised and how I was brought up and how I was subconsciously, because that's the other thing too, is I didn't realize that I was programmed this way. I didn't realize that this was an unhealthy way to be in relationships.
Yeah.
I thought that this was the way to be in relationships.
Mm.
And it's what I saw my mom do. It's how my mom was in relationship with me and how I was in relationship with her. It's how my brothers all were. Do you know what I mean? There's an aspect of it where that is very much just simply how I was raised and brought up. I was raised to be incredibly toxically codependent and have not zero, but very little autonomy in regards to like what I want, what I think, what I'm doing, all those kind of different things. And I've just recreated that over and over and over again in every relationship. Fast forward up into our relationship, and it's still very present. And so, like, I feel really stupid talking about it because it feels like you were saying earlier, right? You feel weak. I feel like a child. And an adult isn't codependent. An adult can go to the grocery store by themselves.
Can I speak to you feeling like a child?
Sure.
Like that, I think that's like a big part because you've had like a really big awareness of how you're recreating these dynamics. You're recreating your childhood dynamics. And like you're feeling like this right now. And for me, I'll speak with me, like I also create this dynamic, right? Mine was that very much that group think with the ruling parent of the house. And that person was incredibly like codependent, but that's not even like they were controlling everything, controlling their way, their thoughts, their actions, their rules, their belief. And the only time there was a breath is when they weren't around. And there was so much recovery at that space. So having to put on the facade that this is also how I feel, this is also how I like, because if that's how you kept it safe, or else it was violent. So I'm also recreating those dynamics, even though they're not to the extreme, but I know how to play my role. I know how to be like, yeah, we think this, and then becoming incredibly resentful that I don't get to have my thoughts, that I don't get to have my space, my action. And the fact that when I take a little bit of space, it causes you distress. And I'm like, that is so much fucking pressure. But I'm recreating that because I know how to do that. So this feeling like I'm in trouble, this hardship is because now we're saying, hey, we don't want to play by that rule anymore, which means we're going against the parent because they're like, we're switching the parent figures on each other. So that's why we're feeling like a kid. We're feeling like we're in trouble because these dynamics are at play and we're saying, I don't like this. I don't want to do this. So what would happen when you were a kid and you were going against the parent? Like you get in trouble, and that trouble looks differently for everyone. So the fact that we're like, oh, scared, feeling like we're going to get in trouble, that we're going to lose love, that we're going to be punished is absolutely showing that this is coming from an inner child space and that we're working through that because we're having a childlike reaction. Does that kind of, does that resonate in a sense? It resonates for me, but I don't know if that resonates for you.
Yeah, it definitely does resonate. And like, that's the thing that I really struggled with too. Like you said, we were flipping like, this is also something that I'm aware of in the space of like psychology, psychiatry, therapy, all these kind of things where you'll recreate those patterns, but also you'll put your partner into the role of one of your parents. And
that makes me so sick.
Right?
Right.
It's so frustrating.
Right.
And heartbreaking. Yeah. And
that's like, I will never do that. What is happening?
And yet it happens subconsciously. I don't think I have awareness. I'm starting to have awareness of it. And I'm starting to do everything that I can to not do that. But it's very, very difficult and it's very hard because it's so subconscious and it's so ingrained. Like, it's even the simplest things of like, I will be sitting on the couch eating something and I will finish. And the next time you walk by, or rather than me just getting up and taking my plate and putting it away, I will hold on to that plate until you're able to take it from me and go put it away. That seems very simple on one hand, right? Where we're obviously living together and we're partners and we're, making this life together and everything like that. And there's sometimes that I do it for you as well, right? Like grabbing your plate and putting it in the sink. But there's also part of me that can see how I'm a little kid sitting there watching like Saturday morning cartoons, and my mom would come and clear my plate or take my, the bowl of cereal or whatever when I was finished with it. And so like that's one way, and that's kind of like a simple example. There's lots of other ways that suck that I'm not happy about. I'm also like the way that I will project. I'm constantly trying to catch that instead of speaking about we as this fucking group of.
I love that you're working on that, by the way.
We love it too.
It feels really good that you're working really hard on not only your independence in a sense, or interdependence, but I'm liking the fact that you're starting to recognize my own personality, my own wants and needs, and that I get to have something separate from you. And that feels really liberating. And I'm also working on that and removing myself in ways of, I'm overloading it, but I'm also trying to find that balance, right? So I'm shooting that a little farther than it needs to go, but I'm going to balance out. It's just, I love that you're recognizing that and you're giving me my space, and you're like, I think we're doing I'm getting nervous now. I'm getting nervous. I meant to say this really short and it came out really long, and now I'm like, I've overtalked you. I've taken over the conversation, and I was just trying to sneak a little blurb in there just to thank you without really taking up too much space. Now I've taken all the space and I can't stop talking. Total panic moment.
We'll just sit and wait in silence for Stephanie to say more. What does it feel like for you when I shouldn't say what does it feel like, but I'm curious, are you catching ways that you are projecting me into that role of a parent?
Yeah, that's what I was just speaking about when I was talking about how we are doing that, and that's why we feel scared that we're going to get in trouble, that we're going to lose love. Because I'm very much, and it's weird because it's that is why am I doing that? Why am I doing that? And then there's another part of me that's why are you doing that? Why are you behaving that way? Why you're I wouldn't be projecting you in that role if you weren't behaving that way. And then I'm where's your accountability? You got to take responsibility here for the patterns that you're creating. And so I very much am doing that. And what I'm trying to do to mitigate that is taking responsibility for my actions instead of waiting for you to shift so that I can move. Because that's what it was before. I couldn't, the ruling parent had to allow the space. And if they didn't allow it and you tried to push, they would take it. They would, there was no chance. So there's still that part of me that's waiting and being resentful that you don't allow it, or being resentful that you weren't allowing it, as to where now I'm not participating that way. I'm taking my space. I'm taking my anonymity. I'm taking my individuality. I'm taking my wants, my needs. And sometimes I'm too exhausted. Sometimes it looks like just a break, to break away. So seeing how that is showing up, and the way that I'm projecting that on you is taking control of the way I'm responding to that, and allowing myself to see the ways that it's playing out differently. When I do something different, when I change up the dynamic, instead of waiting for you to play the role that I have assigned to you, right? I allow myself to really see the way that you're playing it different, that you're showing up different, and that you're not fitting into the role that I projected onto you. Does that kind of make sense how I'm explaining it, or do I need to go deeper?
No, totally.
So taking that filter off and allowing myself to be, to not foresee your actions and look for them, and allowing your actions to be your unique actions and your role, as opposed to the role that the toxic role that I've assigned to you.
You know what's so fucking frustrating? It makes total sense. I'm so frustrated that we've been together for 12 years. And now we're deciding now's a good time to go ahead and fix this fucking thing.
This isn't the first time.
What do you mean?
This is we've revisited this several times. Patrick Tehan came into our space because of my therapist, because I was working on codependency with her, like coming up in this. And I'm like, well, as soon as I started learning about codependency, I was like, oh, it's my fault. It's my problem. I can control it. If it's all my fault, then I can fix it. And that was so exciting because then I could control. It had nothing to do with you, right? Nothing was your fault, because it's always scary when it's your fault. But if it's my fault, then I'm the problem. That's safe. I can fix it as safe. So I was like, look at all these things that I'm doing wrong. Look at all the ways that I'm coded. Like, this is my fault. This is my fault. This is my fault. And she's like, you need to slow down a little bit. And then started talking to me about trauma bonding, and that codependency is often shamed and shifted and used as a weapon to be like, you're codependent. You're a problem. You need to fix it. And what actually comes up is you're in this cycle, this trauma cycle, and you've trauma bonded and learned how to do that. And then you look for partners that you can form what with? Bonds, because you're bonding, you're relating. And if you only know how to trauma bond, then that's what you look for and you search out. So instead of judging yourself and criticizing and making yourself the worst thing in the world for being codependent, it's like looking at why you were trauma bonded, how trauma bonds come about. And she sent me a video where Patrick Teehan was talking about trauma bonds. And that's how I started on that roller coaster, that rabbit hole. And he came into our space, and that was years ago.
Yeah.
So we're just now looking at it, in my opinion, in a different way. And you got to it first, because when you're like, we're codependent, I'm like, the fuck I am.
Did you forget the several years ago? Like you said, it came into your space. Did you just?
Yeah, because I've healed it, right?
Oh.
And it wasn't because I've healed it so evolved. It's because I refuse to be codependent. I refuse. So I distant, which is the beginning of the conversation, where the opposite of codependent is hyper independent. It's not independence. It's not interdependent. It's you are being just completely like withdrawn and pushing out of your space. And I'm not going to be codependent. So I'm going to shut off my emotions. I'm going to shut off all my needs. I'm going to shut off this and not want to go to you for anything. And when I do, punish myself for it after, because I allowed myself. So trying to find that balance is really, really tricky. Like, I want to be interdependent, and I've got a lot of practice at being dependent and hyper independent. So
do you think you've gotten a lot of practice being dependent? Like we talked about this too
being
the other
dependent?
day, where like, I think I have like almost no practice at being dependent by myself. And I don't mean like, because we were talking about this.
Just explain what dependent is. Like, a dependent for me is like being 100%, like I don't get to do anything. Like, I'm 100% dependent on you.
I see. So I would, yeah, okay. So what I thought you were saying was like, I'm independent. I'm dependent on no one else. I'm solely dependent upon myself.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we had that clarifier.
That hyper. Like, that's saying this, like, I'm experienced being dependent and hyper independent, but I'm missing the interdependence. I struggle with the healthy bonds, and it goes beyond our relationship, because I'm so focused on us that I forgot how to have relationships with other people, like friendships. I struggle really hard with friendships, and I'm practicing friendships and showing up vulnerable in spaces when it's like, I've had a role that I have to be there, be the support system, and not have anything in return. And then when I am vulnerable and when I need something, it just like, that's not the friendship agreement. So then it all falls apart. So again, reiterates that I'm not allowed to have needs, and I shouldn't be needy. And I need to be like, so I'm working on healing that with friendships and being like, oh, I'm going to show up with my rawness. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be messy here. I'm going to talk about a hard day, and like, trust that you're not going to hate me now. You're still going to want to hang out with me. And now I'm not too much for you.
I want to pause real fast.
Okay.
I want to take a deep breath together. I'm recognizing some signs in you that, see, this is really hard.
You're fucking calling me out right now.
Well, we do this sometimes where we talk about hard things in front of lights and cameras and on a podcast and everybody else that is out there listening and or watching. And then we aren't really connected to like the moment and to our bodies and to the experience.
Oh, I'm definitely checked out.
So
I got really scared.
I'm really scared right now too.
Yeah.
I'm feeling
here.
like everybody that's listening to this is like, these fucking idiots.
Right?
Right. Look at these two. And then in the meantime, they're like, I have the healthiest relationship in the world. And you probably do not have the healthiest relationship. You're probably on some end of this spectrum between codependency and hyperindependency, right? I think that what we are talking about and navigating, actually, I said we were going to take a deep breath together and relax. You slow down or no? Is it hard too?
I want to hear you express a way that you've seen my point of view. As I feel like and maybe I haven't, and if I haven't, please let me know. But I feel like I've communicated a lot of ways of the where I've seen it, and I guess I want to feel just a little bit heard.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I do hear you.
Yeah.
And I think you did a really, really good job of explaining a lot of ways that you see it play out and that you've been navigating it and that it's been in your space and out of your space. And yeah, I totally see it. And like I said, I think you did a really good job of articulating it.
Okay.
And communicating it.
Thank you.
I was definitely trying to caretake you a little bit because I want you to be in your body. I want you to be here and present. I want you to be able to have this conversation and not feel bad afterwards.
Yeah.
You know?
Is it okay if I feel bad afterwards?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Do you remember what I was starting to rant off on before?
No, that focal point where I feel like all the focus got right tuned on me and I totally panicked.
Well, I did the thing that I talked about at the beginning of the fucking episode where I am dysregulated in my body and recognizing that in some regards, but instead of like just taking that and feeling that and being in that myself, I have to go like, hey, Stephanie, you're probably feeling this same way.
Right. And
let's bring awareness. So
I think
live action there, folks, of toxic codependency playing out.
the truth of the matter is you and I are and this isn't but the truth is our relationship, and that's what I mean, like when it's you and I, is like our relationship has had something significant come into its space. And we are both working really hard and looking at some really big new things. And maybe they're not new, but they're new in the way that we're looking at it.
Yeah.
So we're having some really big things that come up. And of course, old coping mechanisms are coming into play because that's how, like, their survival, that's how it works. So we're having these come into our space. And for me, I'm scared. I'm feeling alone. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling incapable, and knowing full-heartedly that I guess I don't have to, like, I am choosing to keep moving towards this space, towards it, looking at all of these things and healing. And for me, all of these coping mechanisms are coming up. And my first go-to when it comes to this is distance, is wanting everything to be okay on the outside, but pulling myself as far into safety on the inside as I can. Protecting, like, my soul in a sense. I pull my essence as far away as possible and wrap it in as many layers as I can so it's not hurt, while my body, in a sense, is experiencing these things. So it's really, really hard. And that's why it's coming up so loudly in this space for me. And I didn't see it until you mentioned how codependent you were feeling. And then, yes, how codependent you saw me. And it didn't resonate because of how withdrawn I'm being, with how isolating in a way and protecting, but also trying to find as many healthy things. And so it seemed really, really strange. Really strange. And a part of that healing was very much like, that's not how I'm experiencing it. Give me space. Give me space. And then seeing, after sitting with it and like hearing you and hearing where you were coming from and seeing how important it was to you and how like you were feeling it so deeply in your body, and being curious and looking and seeing, I'm in that space, but I can't see all the ways, or I couldn't see all the ways that I was being codependent. And I could only see the ways that I was self-protecting. And the middle ground was absent.
We just want to push pause and really thank you for tuning into the podcast today. We both have personal experiences where we were massively impacted by things that we've heard on podcasts. So we're big believers in the healing power of a podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody. That helps the podcast grow and expand, and we have a really big mission. We're on a goal to reach 1 million people with this podcast, and we need your help. So if you wouldn't mind, just take a screenshot, send that to a friend or to a family member, and then take a minute and go ahead and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening and leave us a review. Those things will help immensely, and we'd be deeply grateful. Because remember, we believe that we all do better when we heal together. Now let's get back to the show.
The healthy was absent. In that space, I was very much in a, it's a self, I can't think of the word, but I was very much, I could only see the ways that we were separating in a sense, because I needed space. I needed a space. I didn't feel like you were codependent on me. What it feels like for me, and whether it's that or not, or the role that I'm giving it, is that you were telling me how it actually was. You were telling me what we were doing, what I was thinking, what I was feeling, what was acceptable, like how I should parent, everything. It felt like I had to like get it approved through you. And I'm not saying that's what it was. That's like very much the role that I assigned to you. But my experience, because I assigned that role, was that. And that's what I was separating from. So I didn't feel the codependency. And I couldn't feel it from you either, because there's still the part of me that's like, well, if you were relying on me, if you were like loving me, if you were like bringing your energy this way, like I would feel like I had more of a say instead of feeling like you had all the say. So it was very strange. And to sit and look at it and have to, okay, look at all these ways that it's there. It's a hard process. And there's a really strong part of me that says, I need to know that you see me as an individual, but I'm not going to engage beyond what is healthy for me to do that. It's either you can meet me there or you can't, but I'm not going to wait, which is, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's like, I can't put myself aside and beg you to see me. I can't put myself aside and beg you to show me. It's either you do or you don't, but this is what I'm going to do. And then I have to allow space for healing. I have to allow space for connection. I have to allow space for like really reflecting on the way that I am contributing to unhealthy, like toxicity to the trauma bonds that I am not allowing healthy bonds myself, instead of just looking at the ways that your actions are stopping the ability for healthy bonds, because it's not just you and it's not just me.
Yeah. You did a really beautiful job right then expressing so many different things. Like your throat is like free flowing and it's very, very awesome. I was very like just in the moment appreciating everything that you were saying, but then also like appreciating the woman that you are and my partner and everything else, just being able to communicate all of these things, especially around a topic that is so fucking hard for us to talk about, right? It's so hard. It's so funny because bringing it up on our anniversary and then kind of like the disillusion, but like the shit that we went through in the moment of that conversation, immediately, I think both of us, but I'll speak for myself as best as I can. I'm like, that's it. We're getting a divorce. It's over. I brought up codependency and how I'm trying to heal it. And now we're going to definitely break up. And this is it. Our relationship is now transitioned into a phase where it's ending. And listening to us talk about this on this podcast and trying to navigate all of it and articulate and just clusterfuck our way through it, I'm sitting here with so much gratitude and appreciation and awareness of how safe we must feel in our relationship to be able to process this and talk about this, not just on the podcast, but in our real everyday life. Because, we were talking about how, God, we've been together for 12 years and we're, like, why didn't this happen 10 years ago? Why didn't this happen, 5 years ago? How come we haven't done this level of processing and healing and looking at this? We should be so much further along than we are right now. And I think the reality is it's amazing that we have been able to create such a safe relationship with each other that has allowed the space for us to be able to start healing this part of it. Because for me, this dynamic of being so anxiously, codependently attached to you is 100% connected to that exact relationship and dynamic with my mom, and trying to heal that part of my life and that part of my childhood and all the trauma surrounding all of that through the lens of this relationship with you now. And like we said earlier, I hate that is kind of what is happening. And I hate all of the awkward, weird, funky uncomfortableness of like, why would I do that? All of that thing of projecting your parents into your relationship. But I'm also really grateful because I have extensive trauma from that relationship and from that childhood that I am healing and want to heal. So I'm really grateful for it on one hand. And I think it's really amazing that we are at a point in our relationship where this is it, right? What's on our path is for us, whatever it might be. This is clearly on our fucking path for a reason. And we're looking at it and we're clusterfucking our way through it and stumbling and tripping and having hard conversations. But what I really love is that at the end of the day, you and I are finding ways through it, and we're finding ways to connect, and we're finding ways to like sit in the uncomfortableness of it and still dance back and forth between it's I'm excited to edit this episode and go back and look at it because it's evident how we go back and forth from like, oh, there we are leaning into subconsciously codependent attachment styles with each other in toxic ways. And now we're trying to not we do this dance back and forth every day between trying to become self-regulating adults that can be in a healthy relationship with each other, as opposed to co-regulating toxic codependent adults that are really just little kids in adult bodies moving around. And so I'm excited. I'm scared. I'm nervous. I'm grateful. I'm really, really grateful that you keep showing up to this fucking dance, to this thing. You keep showing up to this relationship, even though it's like ass sometimes. It's not easy. And it's really hard what we're doing and what we're navigating. But I'm really, really grateful that you're here and that you keep, like I said, showing up. And I'd like to think, like I have this part of me that's like, I could do this by myself. I don't think I can. I think the level of, like earlier I was going to talk about how I've never been alone. I've never not been in a relationship. I can't even think about the amount of time. I mean, I dare say it's like a month or something, right? I don't even think there's been a time in my life where I wasn't in a relationship. From the point of like graduating high school and moving out of the house, I've been in a relationship. And I've never had, and I've always, for the most part, I've always lived with those people, right? I've always lived with somebody else too. I've never lived by myself. I've never had like an apartment, a bachelor pad. I've never been alone. When I say for any significant amount of time, I mean literally like ever. I would really have to sit and think of like maybe a month, maybe, a month and a half at the most. But other than that, and that was probably like once, and I was probably drunk the entire time, right? I was knee deep into coping mechanisms to try to get through that. So I don't think I would be able to go through this healing process of navigating this level of attachment that is no longer serving me without you. I don't think I'd be able to do it by myself because, past evidence has proven that I struggle with being alone. And now it's trying to figure out how can I not be alone? Like I don't need to be alone, but I need to be okay by myself. I need to be okay doing things alone. I need to be okay, do you know what I mean? By myself. And I want that. Like there's a part of me too that I can feel like, it's really funny because when we look at it through this lens of inner child stuff and all of these things that come up for us, I can very much feel, I remember as a child wanting to be older, right? I had older brothers. So it's like, as a little boy, it's like, I'm so excited for when I get to be a big kid, when I get to be a teenager, when I get to be an adult. I'm always looking for that next phase of life. And I'm excited for where I'm at right now because I very much feel like I'm still a little kid and I'm like really excited for that phase of life where I'm like an adult that can be alone by himself for a minute without having a fucking meltdown or, resulting, without going towards some sort of toxic coping mechanism to soothe myself in those moments. So it's messy. And I think we've proven that, if anything, right? That codependency is really toxic and hard and messy. At times, we would love to hear your take on it. We would love to see what your experience has been of this. And if you resonate with some of these things that we talked about. Again, with the podcast, we're not always looking to, we've got a lot of great wisdom and a lot of the lessons that we've learned. And I'm excited. We've got an episode that's coming up that I'm really excited about because we have a technique that we kind of came up with ourselves, and we're excited to share those kind of things with you all. And the truth of it is we are actively working through so many different things in our relationship, and our intention is to bring it here and share it with you in hopes that you can see your relationships through the lens of our relationship, and you can relate to what we're going through because you are going through it as well. And it's like we always talk about where we need other people to heal. We need relationships to kind of highlight things that we can see. And that's the intention with this podcast, especially with episodes like this that we do, is we want you to be able to see yourself through us and what you're going through and what you're experiencing. And we'll kind of do our best to hold up this mirror and share as vulnerably and honestly. And it's hard.
It is so hard, but it's so important. Like seeing behind the veil, seeing that other people are struggling and going through what you are going through, for me is so liberating, because I know that like when you're looking at social media and it looks like you're the only one that is struggling. It looks like you're the only one that doesn't have your shit together. And you have these things that look like everything's perfect, everything's fine. If I could just be better, I would have that relationship. If I could just heal, if I could just do this, you start to look at all the ways that your relationship isn't looking like that. So to see that, Matt, it's hard. It's hard for everyone. Everyone is going through something. It doesn't matter how put together they look. It doesn't matter how put together they are. Like, we've done a lot of work. We are really, really healthy in a lot of areas. And oh my gosh, do we have such a good supply of stuff to heal? We have buckets and buckets and buckets of stuff to go through that is hard, that we are messing up every single day. And some of it we see and we're working on, and some of it we're just dancing in the chaos and have no clue. It's shit that we have not even begun to have awareness of. And one day we will, and we'll probably talk about it on the podcast. And you might be watching it now being going, have you all looked at this? Probably not,
Right.
But we're trying.
Yeah, if you see something that we're not looking at, keep it to yourself. We don't want to fucking hear it.
Our plate is full right now of shit we're working on.
So if this resonated with you, we'd love to hear about it. If you haven't already, go follow us on social media. We share a lot of this stuff as well, of our lived experience online and everything like that. So go check us out, all those different places. And please, if this resonated with you, share it with somebody. Again, we have a really big mission with this podcast. We want to help as many people as we can, not just create better relationships and their best lives, but we really, truly believe that we all need each other if we're going to heal and get through this whole crazy thing called life. So share this podcast with somebody, send it to somebody that you think is going to benefit from it. And yeah, all of those things help. All of that helps this podcast continue to grow and reach more people. And the more people that we reach and the bigger the podcast gets, then the greater, it just all gets more exponentially bigger and bigger and bigger and better ways. And we get more amazing guests on and all sorts of different things. So this is just beginning, and you're here at the ground floor, and we really appreciate it and all the support that we've gotten. Anything else, babe?
I think that's it for now.
Should we give them our motto?
Yeah, let's give them our
The
motto.
mantra that is dictating everything in our life right now.
Dictating.
It's a dictator mantra. Expect the best.
Plan for the greatest.
And we'll see you guys next
We
week.
got a wild ride. Wait and see, you and me. We were meant to be.
We want to make something perfectly clear. This podcast is presented for educational and entertainment purposes only. It's not intended to be used as a substitute for professional advice. We're sharing with you our own personal insights and experiences, things that we have found to be helpful and healing on our journey. But we are not licensed therapists. If you need help, it's important to seek out a qualified professional. Remember, we believe we all do better when we heal together. See you soon.